Gonna love what you're doing. Oh, one other thing I was gonna say that reminds me is that John is, my husband's recording this, and it'll be up on the not Facebook page, the church website. So that if you know somebody else that wanted to come that didn't get here, they can log on to our church website and we'll put it up or give it to you. Or if you Google the Woodlands Community Presbyterian Church in the Woodlands, you'll see it. Anyway, so there's a way you can watch it again or have other people tune in and see what it's all about. So thank you for coming. And thank you, Lee.
And the pace back and forth when I talk, so hopefully can you all hear me pretty well?
Laura's gonna do it. She's got you tethered.
So I have a very crooked smile. I had a cancerous tumor many years ago in 2001 on my facial nerve, and they had to take the nerve out. It took a lot of nerve what I did to do that. And it hadn't spread. I'm healthy, but I smile a little bit lopsidedly, but I still smile. There's a lot to smile about. I'm a bit hoarse, so forgive me. I'm Jewish. And first of all, I want to thank Pastor Laura and Pastor David and John and Nancy and Sonia and all of you for welcoming me. I really felt just comfortable, and it was lovely, and everybody was genuinely happy to see me and introducing themselves, and it was a great way to spend my last day in Texas, tomorrow I'm flying back to Oregon. So I'm Jewish. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, and I spent 20 plus years in Israel. First, a year of high school, and the way I describe it is Israel kind of got into my blood. I was there at age 16. I learned Hebrew, and that sort of set my trajectory for eventually moving there. I went back and lived on what's called a kibbutz, a cooperative agricultural settlement, for a year and a half. And then I spent 20 years living in Jerusalem. Got married there. 2 of my children were born there. I had to do a short stint in the Israeli army. But more than anything else, the thing that I was most passionately involved with, primarily as a volunteer, was trying to build relations and reconciliation between Jews and Arabs in Israel, between Israelis and Palestinians. 22% of Israeli citizens are Palestinian Arabs. And in 1948, when Israel was founded, some of the Palestinian people ended up inside of Israel's borders, and some were outside of Israel's borders in the West Bank and Gaza and around the world. There are Palestinians in Houston and maybe probably some in the Woodlands. The struggle of Palestinians inside of Israel is a little bit different. Their goal is to get equal rights. And they often feel like they're second-class citizens. There's discrimination, but they also feel a kinship with their cousins in the West Bank and in Gaza. And there's a former parent at hand in hand, a Palestinian Israeli lawyer. And for him, he describes the conflict very simply. He says, this conflict is like my people being at war with my country. His people are the Palestinian people, but he's an Israeli. His country is Israeli. He speaks Hebrew. He's a lawyer, works in the Israeli court system, and lives in a Jewish neighborhood. And for them, it's very challenging. Unfortunately, the thing that characterizes the relationship between Jewish Israelis and Palestinian Arab Israelis is separation and segregation. It's not segregation the way it was in the South and still is in many places in the North by law. There's no law that prevents Arabs and Jews from being together. But by virtue of language, Jews speak Hebrew, Arabs, their first language is Arabic. Also geography, there are many places in Israel, and it's hard for Americans to comprehend this. There are many places where an entire town of 10, 20, 30,000 people, every single person is Arab, or another town where every single person is Jewish. Sometimes those towns are right across the street from one another, across the road. But there's also cities that are mixed cities. Jerusalem has Arabs and Jews. Tel Aviv, Jaffa, Arabs and Jews. Haifa, there's a city called Upper Nazareth above the Arab city of Nazareth. Even in those mixed cities where there's Jews and Arabs live physically close to one another, there's very little interaction. And the biggest separation is in the school system. There is a public school system. There's a track for Arabs, Arabic-speaking curriculum, and a track for Jews. And on the Jewish side, there are more secular schools, and then there are also Orthodox schools. And there was never a model in which Jewish and Arab kids could go to school together. And in a place where there's a war, sometimes a hot war like the past 2 years, and I'll talk about that shortly, if you never meet the person from the other community that you're in conflict with, and you grow up till age 18. And then if you're Jewish, you're required to do military service, women for 2 years, men for 2 years and 9 months. It's much harder as an adult to then break the ice and meet people from the other community. The conflict is much more complicated than just getting people to go to school together. But one part of solving that conflict, an important part, is bringing people together. So if there's a mosaic of peacemaking, and there's a lot of pieces, many of those pieces are getting kids to be in school together. So in 1997, I was lucky enough to be in a postgraduate program called the School for Educational Leadership, which gave me time and gave us a stipend. And our goal was to create new initiatives in education. And I started thinking about a school setting as a wonderful place to bring Arabs and Jews together. There was a lot of dialogue meetings in the 1980s when I was in graduate school that I helped lead a dialogue group with Arabs and Jews, but they were very superficial. You meet, you talk, you have hummus or falafel together, and then you may not see each other again. If you can get kids to come to school, you do a lot of work to get them to enroll, then you have them for the whole year. And if you have young kids in school, you usually get their parents. And if they can be learning 2 languages, Hebrew and Arabic, you've opened the doors to real intercultural communication. So, but I was a Jewish Israeli, and I knew that I needed to have an Arab partner to do this with, because in a situation where there's conflict, me coming as a Jew to an Arab and saying, join my school, at the best, they might think I'm being paternalistic. At worst, they might feel threatened. So I met my Arab co-founder, a man named Amin Khalaf, and the word Amen comes from the Hebrew. The word Laha Amin means to believe. Amunah means belief, and Amin in Arabic is the same meaning. And he told me a story. He grew up in a tiny village in northern Israel, close to the old Green Line, close to the West Bank. They didn't have electricity till he was 10 years old. They used generators. His parents at the most had an 8th grade education. He was Muslim, but he was lucky enough to be enrolled in a school in Nazareth, and Nazareth is a mixed Arab, Christian Arab, Muslim Arab city. He went to one of the Christian schools there, top-notch academic schools. And then he came to Hebrew University in Jerusalem, and he told me that the first time he met a Jew was when he was 19 years old, and he came to Hebrew University, and he felt out of place. His Hebrew wasn't so good. The Jews are the dominant force. For him, it was kind of scary. And he said, I don't want my son, who was then 4 years old, a boy named Yazan, to wait until he's 19 to go meet Jews. And his son was in our very first class. He was in our guinea pig class and went all the way through high school. When we started, we both lived in Jerusalem, and we knew we wanted to have a model of this integrated bilingual school in Jerusalem, but we also were worried that we might not succeed, and we needed to have a kind of backup plan. So we were looking for a place, and we spent a lot of time in the Galilee. I mean, you've heard of the Galilee, but the Galilee is in northern Israel. It's a region that's the most beautiful part of Israel. It's north of Nazareth, leading up to the Lebanese border. And there are lots of places, as I mentioned, where there are these Arab towns and Jewish towns, and Arab towns and Jewish towns. And we probably had 60 meetings with mayors of small towns, principals of schools, other activists, and most people said it's a wonderful idea, but it'll never work. They said Jewish and Arab parents will never send their children to an integrated school because there's too much history of conflict, fear, ignorance. A few people said it's a crazy idea, it probably won't work, but you should try it. And we were naive in a good way, because if we weren't naive, if we were being more realistic, we would have said, well, it's not going to work, let's go do something else. And we settled on an area in the central Galilee, which is basically, as the crow flies, 20 miles north of Nazareth. And we started on September 1st, 1998 in Jerusalem with a kindergarten class, where we got space in an existing building, and a first grade in an area, a kind of these prefab classrooms where they gave us space. Those were our schools, 50 students in total. The model was the kindergartners will move up to first grade. We'll have a new kindergarten class. The first graders will go to second grade, a new first grade class. Jump to this year, we have a little bit over 2,100 students in 6 campuses. In 5 of our 6 schools, we have a pretty big waiting list. There's not enough space. About 10 years ago or so, or maybe even more, we knew this, but we said really much more strongly, we can't put the burden of solving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict on the shoulders of the 6-year-old kids. We want them to be school children, to like their teacher, not like their teacher, play soccer, do well in school, need extra help in school, all the things that kids go through. Kids have challenges all the time. We need the parents and other adults to take up some of this slack. So we hired in every location where there's a school, a community worker whose role it is to organize interactions and programming that bring Jewish and Arab parents and other adults together. And we have now about 4,000 adults who come together, not daily, but sometimes weekly, sometimes monthly. And we also found that throughout this time when there's been a lot of, this is the fourth war between Israel and Hamas, this is 1,000 times worse, but we've dealt with this. We found all the time that our kids really have an easy time. They've grown up together, they're friends, and you'll hear them quoting like, why should we be arguing about politics when we can argue about where we want to go to have lunch? The parents are our most challenging group. First of all, they're older, and we as adults don't change as easily as kids do. The parents didn't go to integrated schools. There were none. The Jews went to Jewish schools, the Arabs to Arab schools. For many of our new parents, sometimes coming to the school and meeting other parents is the first time they've met someone from the other community, especially on the Jewish side. The average Jew in Israel is never really engaged with Arabs. And most Jews in Israel don't speak Arabic, even though it's a common language there. So we have all these programming with adults, and the programming run from simple things like celebrating holidays together. We have, in 5 of our 6 schools, we have both Christian Arabs and Muslim Arabs. The Muslim Arabs are the largest group of Arabs. So we have Hanukkah and Ramadan and Christmas and Easter and Passover and all those holidays. And those holidays are for us a wonderful doorway into sharing each other's cultures. In schools in Israel, you can speak about religion, and kids learn in our schools more about Islam, Christianity, and Judaism than any other school. Most Jews in Israel don't know a lot about Christianity. They know there's Christmas, they know there's Santa Claus, but they don't know. I mean, in Jewish schools, they have to study Torah, the Old Testament. They know very little about the Quran. 2 years ago this month, there was a horrific attack. On October 7th, on Saturday, it was on the Jewish holiday of Simchat Torah, the end of the holiday of Sukkot. 1,200 Israelis were killed. I know one of the persons who was killed, a woman named Vivian Silver, who was a peace activist. She lived on a kibbutz called Be'eri. The grandmother of one of our students in Haifa was murdered on her kibbutz, the same kibbutz. One of the hostages who was taken at the music festival, the Nova Music Festival, later killed by Hamas, his first cousins, our students in our school, he and his parents had visited our school. One of our graduates, Jewish graduate, who was called into reserve duty, was killed in Gaza. And between 150 and 200 of our Arab families have relatives in Gaza, many of whom have been killed, many of whom they've lost contact with. So this touches, there's not even 1 degree of separation. People feel this. I mean, even outside of our school, everybody in Israel, Arab or Jewish, knows somebody or knows of somebody that was directly affected. But in our school, we deal with this very, very differently, because there are people in our school that can talk about how we mourn and hurt the loss of life on the Palestinian side. And it's been horrific. 67,000 people have been killed and many more injured, and half the buildings destroyed or damaged. And they can also mourn the loss of life on the Jewish side. There's a tradition in Jewish tradition, it's a mourning tradition called sitting Shiva, which means Shiva comes from the word Sheva, which means 7 days, where you'll go to a mourner's house and sit for 7 days. And the Orthodox people don't actually leave the house, they don't shave. When the grandmother of this student, and there's an article here, the article from the Los Angeles Times is about this story, about this. She was very proud of her son for enrolling her grandchildren in the hand-in-hand school. And it talks about him in that background. And then after the funeral, a group of Arab parents wanted to go and pay respects, but they didn't know would they be welcome. I mean, this was a divisive time. And they called up and spoke with his wife. And she said, of course you're welcome, you're our friends. And 30 Arab parents came, many of them for the first time ever at a Jewish mourning ceremony. And some of them said it's very similar to Muslim ceremonies. And that unfortunately doesn't happen in Israel. You didn't see a lot of people, you saw people pushed into their respective corners, moving farther away from talk about peace. You had people who, from a visceral reaction, were saying there are no innocents in Gaza, wanting to take revenge. I'm very much opposed to what Israel did in Gaza, and but I also can try to understand where people come from and try to win them over and understand that, not The Palestinians are not Hamas. Hamas is part of the Palestinians. And I told the Palestinians, Israelis aren't all the ultra right-wing people in the far extremes of the government who want to just ethnic cleanse Gaza and get rid of the Palestinians. When parents get together, even in more peaceful times, especially new parents, we bring in an Arab and a Jewish facilitator. And we've created this culture of dialogue, and it's sort of like compassionate listening. We usually have the adults sit in a circle, and the general rule is everybody speaks before someone else speaks, a round robin. We call it in Hebrew a sevev. And your goal is not to win the argument. Your goal is to make your story, your narrative heard, and then for you to listen to someone else's narrative. And you may not agree. Arabs and Jews in Israel have different views of history. In 1948, when Israel was founded, it's a holiday in Israel. There's Yom HaZikaron, which is Israeli Memorial Day, starts one evening and ends the next evening, and it immediately becomes Israeli Independence Day, Yom HaAtzmaut. For Israeli Jews, we got our independence. We got a Jewish state. Palestinians refer to that now as the Nakba. Nakba is the Arabic word which means catastrophe, because that was the beginning of the Palestinian refugees. 700,000 refugees were expelled, left, forced out, went to the West Bank, went to Gaza. Many of them went to Gaza. A very personal story. I'm going to show a video and of one of our schools, our youngest school, and the principal there is a young man, looks like a rock star. His name is Mohammed Kunduz. He's Muslim, and he grew up in the town of Jaffa, which is now part of Tel Aviv. In 1948, Jaffa was a mixed city. There were Jews and Arabs, and in the Palestinian narrative, they were expelled and kicked out. Jews will say maybe they left of their own free will, but it was a tragedy. Many of them left and went to Gaza. Gaza is just down the coast. I mean, distances are very short. It's 30 miles down the coast. Muhammad's grandfather was one of maybe 8 or 9 brothers and sisters. All of his grandfather's siblings left and went to Gaza. His grandfather stayed, and the story that the grandfather told him was that I stayed in Jaffa because it's my home and because of my Jewish neighbors, meaning he felt loyal and they felt loyal to him. And he talks about how he's working hand in hand in honor of his late grandfather. But he has relatives in Gaza, but he is able to talk about it with sadness, and probably there's some anger, but what he does with his anger is he says, let's build a different kind of future for children, and ideally for adults as well. Israel has now 10 million people. It's grown a lot. When I first moved there were 3 million people. It's grown a tremendous amount. There are probably 1.7 million school children in Israel. So those people who know math, there's at least one former math teacher here. 2,100 into 1.8 million, it's a real fraction of a percent. So there's a lot of reasons to be pessimistic about the world today. You can say it's a drop in the bucket, or you can be a cautious optimist, or homeopathy. They say homeopathy works like the analogy is you take one drop, put it into a bucket of a gallon of water with that one drop, pour the bucket into the swimming pool, mix it up, take one drop out, and it helps you. That's what they say. So if you're a cautious optimist, you can say we started with 50 kids, we now have 2,100. And there's a famous anthropologist, Margaret Mead, and she says, never doubt that a small group of dedicated people can change the world. In fact, it's the only thing that ever was. So we believe we're part of a movement. We believe that we're not a bubble. We believe that we're more of an incubator, because an incubator means that we're creating something that needs a lot of nurture, like a small premature baby. And ideally, that premature baby then goes out into the wider world and has impact. By smiling, by being cute. Our kids smile a lot. You'll see in some videos. A lot of Israelis now are really angry, and they just, sometimes you can take righteous anger and you can do really good things with it. Sometimes you have to overcome your anger and say, I'm going to reach out to someone who might seem like my enemy, and we're going to learn how to break bread together, play soccer together, learn each other's languages, and ideally be a model for. So I wanted to really speak briefly because I can answer a lot of questions, but I want to show maybe 2 short videos and then take questions, and I can elaborate a lot. Unless someone has a real burning question and has to leave, by the way, yes.
I'm just wanting to understand a little bit better
Yeah.
about what context you're giving. It sounded like you were talking about, Arabs that live in Israel. You were not referring to them as Israeli Arabs and Israeli Jews. You were referring to them as Palestinians. But my
Yes.
husband and I are also Israeli, and we spend half the year in Israel and half the year here. Our children and our grandchildren live in Israel, and we actually have many, many close associates in Israel who are Muslim Israelis, Christian Israelis, Jewish Israelis. And if you are a Muslim or Christian Arab Israeli, it would be very insulting for them to be called Palestinians. They don't identify as Palestinian, they identify as Israelis. And there are Arab Israelis that serve in the army. There are Arab Israelis that run the hospitals. The hospital where my husband's late mother passed away, it was run and managed by a wonderful Israeli Arab doctor. All of my mother-in-law's nurses were Israeli Arabs. And so
Well,
I think they would be very insulted to be called Palestinian. So I'm curious, are the children in your schools, are they Israeli Arabs and Jews and Christians? Or are you saying that you have children in your schools from the Palestinian territories?
so a lot of polls show that a growing number, in fact, maybe a majority of Arab citizens of Israel refer to themselves as Palestinian citizens of Israel, especially younger ones. They're Israeli citizens. We work inside of Israel. We don't work in the West Bank. In Jerusalem, we have some 10% of our Arab students come from East Jerusalem because anybody in the city can come, and that 10% primarily doesn't have Israeli citizenship, but they're Hebrew speakers. So they are Arab, but more and more call themselves Palestinian citizens of Israel. And I don't argue with someone's identity. I mean, I use that term because that's how many of them, and in fact, in our schools, refer to themselves. They're definitely Israeli. Their parents have gone to universities. We do have doctors and lawyers. They work inside and they speak Hebrew. And they're Arabs, clearly. And they're Muslim Arabs and Christian Arabs. And most are Muslim in our schools, just related to there's a larger number of Muslim Arabs than Christian Arabs. But that's how many of them are referring themselves.
That's so interesting.
Not everyone is like that.
My husband grew up in Israel, and
Yep.
I made Aliyah, and we've been so integrated in Israeli society. And in our experience, the Muslim population of Israel, the Arab Israelis, the Israelis who are Muslims, the Israelis who are Christians, the Israelis who are Jews, they're all so proud to be Israeli, and that's why you have such an enormously large number of Muslim Israelis in the IDF.
Very few Muslim Israelis. The Druze are drafted. Very, very small. I mean, I know the statistics. Very, very small number of Arabs join the army. Druze don't. It's very small, and I'm not putting a value to it. It's hard for many of them. It depends where they're from. In Abu Ghosh, that city outside of Jerusalem, then you go to the army. In the communities that we work with, very, very, very small number. And it's
Yes, but I mean, it's a minority group inside of Israel. But they even if you're a Muslim, and you live in Israel, they identify as Israelis. They don't deny their Israeli,
I know they're Israelis, but
Yeah.
but more and more of them call themselves Palestinian Israelis and I think that if you meet, I mean, I don't want to argue. We can talk about this afterwards, but it's an identity that many people in our school, many people in academia, many people who are lawyers. It doesn't mean they're not Israeli,
Right.
and they also it's difficult for many of them because they have cousins, figuratively and literally cousins in the West Bank or in Gaza, and they feel for that. I think that. And there are many Palestinian Israelis, Arab Israelis, many, not all, who feel that they face discrimination as well, even though close to half the new doctors are Arab pharmacists. There's also a huge segment of the Arab population that's represented in high school dropout and below the poverty line. They do face discrimination and have to overcome a lot of that. And I think a lot of them come to our schools so they can learn Hebrew at a younger age and get a better education and have better life chances later.
A lot of the problems in the Arab communities within Israel, it's not about the political situation, it's that in Arab society, normally you only have one person working, it's not usually a dual income family, and they also have very, very many children. And
That's-
they end up.
I don't want to argue with this. It's not true. I mean, the majority now of Arabs, women are working because they have to do that. And the birth rate among Arabs has gone down drastically because they're living in urban. I mean, the biggest birth rate is among ultra-Orthodox Jews. In our schools, middle class Arab, they have 2 children usually, mostly. But let me show these videos and we can talk more. I mean, I think that it's the Arabic community in Israel is just as diverse as the Jewish community. There's a lot of differences. There are some who will call themselves Arab Israelis. Some will just call themselves Muslims. Some and many will call themselves Palestinian citizens of Israel, and they identify with the Palestinian people, but their focus, they live in Israel, it's their home, and they want to get ahead in Israeli society, but also change things and protest what they view as discrimination or the war or whatever.
There is a very large group of people who did live in the Palestinian territories, for example, in the homosexual community, and they have received shelter in Israel. And they have brought the many individuals from the Palestinian territories into Israel to seek shelter because they were not able to live in the Palestinian territories.
Right.
Yeah.
So I have a video here of our youngest school, which is on a college campus called Beit Barrel in the city of Kfar Saba. And it's there's subtitles, but it's in English for the most part. If you can, yeah. Can you hear it?
Hello, welcome to our school, Yad V'Yad. My name is Nai Mansour. I live in Tira and I'm 8 years old. Hello, my name is Yuval. I'm 8 years old. I live in Moshav Chagol. Me and Yuval were in the same class. I am Jewish and Nai is Arabic, and I like to learn from my friends who are different from me. I like art, especially drawing. I like math because it's a lot of science and it's really interesting. This is our classroom. In our school, we celebrate Jewish and Arabic holidays. Sometimes in the holidays, we teach the younger kids. It's fun and I feel like older. This is where we do our morning circle. It's special at our school that we both Arabic and Jewish learn together. I really like to learn Arabic because it's interesting and it's like a new language and I like to discover it.
Being part of an integrated bilingual school gives our students the opportunity to see the other as a partner and not as an enemy. In our school, we put emphasis on critical thinking. We allow our students to ask questions, explore in order to find themselves. Being part of this family fills me with joy, fills me with responsibility. I love coming here every morning to join these kids, to learn from them, to be part of this social revolution in order to make a better future.
Meanwhile, we're getting the second video. If anybody has any more questions. The lights. Any? Yes.
Attract your first set of students.
So at the first 2 schools we started in Jerusalem with kindergarten and in the Galilee, we reached out to parents. We really had to work very hard. There was always a bigger. It's been easier for us to recruit Arab parents. They're the minority in Israel. Want to learn Hebrew at a younger age. They see education as their most important vehicle for success in Israeli society. Jewish families had other options. They had more school options, different varieties of schools. But we worked really hard. We did it was a lot of word of mouth. And that's still probably the most important vehicle that we have for recruiting students is that parents in the school tell their friends. They come and visit. We do parlor meetings starting in January and February, where existing parents will host. Some of our graduates come back and lead tours of the school. We don't grow by hundreds and hundreds every year. This year, we added about 100 new students in Haifa. There's a waiting list. We don't have physical space for most of the students, or not all the students who want to come. We thought after October 7th, in October 7th, when all the schools in Israel were closed because there was still rocket fire coming from Hamas in Gaza, we thought a lot of parents would take their kids out of our school, that they'd be afraid. And we had a little bit under 2,000 students 2 years ago, and only 10 students dropped out. Very small number. Last school year, we thought there would be a drop in registration for new classes. Most of the students start in preschool, kindergarten, or first grade, and we grew again this year. If Hand in Hand had been founded 2 years ago, when October 7th happened, we would have disintegrated. It would have been too much fear, but we've been doing this for a long time, more than 25 years, and the staff and the existing parents sort of just know how to, it's like a muscle, they know how to deal with disagreement. The kids wanted to be back in school after October 7th. It was like a safe refuge for them. They felt comfortable seeing their friends. The parents wanted to come back and talk. But we're still, we're not a gigantic model. It's not going to be the model for the majority of, our goal is to open more schools. There are still places in Israel, mixed cities. There's a city called Akko, north of Haifa. Upper Nazareth, which was built, is now called Nof HaGalil, is a mixed city, about 30% Arab to 70% Jewish. There's no integrated schools there, so we want to try to build models there. But it's slow, deliberate. We get support from local government, and also the national government pays for many of our teachers, the Ministry of Education. Yes. This is another video.
Hello, I'm Tomader. I live in Arabi.
Hi, my name is Mirav Benoon. I live in Haifa with my family.
Hello, my name is Yusuf Shaheen. I live in Haifa.
My name is Itziko. I live in Lavon in the north of Israel.
It was 9 years ago. We were sitting in an old garage, which was actually where our first preschool was. We had only 12 kids, and we were talking about how we want to celebrate the holidays together. And it was then that we realized that we can't just have our kids come together and play together. As adults, we need to have friendships and relationships, and we started the community.
My children goes to Shahar and Juja, a Jewish family, and they play at their home and they come to us, and it's normal.
It has been a difficult time all around the world in the corona, and also in our community. When my family was in isolation, my son got sweet package from his friends in class, and my friends called me all the time. I didn't feel alone. Together with our community, we organized food packages for all the families that were struggling at that period.
We have neighbors on either side of our home. Ruti and Eli, they're a Jewish family, and Basma and Alan, Arab family. And they realized that they had never met each other and they never knew each other's names. Hand-in-hand families bring people together.
It's much beyond than just doing fun, right? It's more about talking and understanding each other, the political view and how they feel and how we feel about living here in this one state. And then this way of understanding, it builds the relations and the community much better.
Every time there's a conflict, Palestinian-Israeli conflict, we as adults, Jews and Arabs, come and we talk about it. It's a process, but we do it together.
In our community, we look around to see where we can make a stand, where we can raise our voice to make a change.
Being part of Hand in Hand, I saw my kids celebrating at school both Jewish, Muslims and Christian holidays. I work for an IT company and we celebrate only Jewish holidays. What we did is we decided to celebrate Ramadan, and we invited a Muslim engineer to come and tell to the entire site. This is about 200 engineers. If I was not seeing it at school, it wouldn't have happened, right? That's amazing. And I'm sure there are many other parents that see similar stuff and bring it to other places of their life.
I chose the school to get the best education for my child, but I ended up with a great, great gift for myself.
People around us are seeing that. They want to join us. Our community is growing. If it can work in hand, it can work all over the country.
Any more questions?
You mentioned before, getting parents together for the first time.
Say that again.
You said before, getting parents from different backgrounds, from
Right.
Jewish and Muslim backgrounds together. What's the common language they have to start off?
The parents are speaking Hebrew together. So in the schools are fully bilingual. The kids are learning both Arabic and Hebrew. And then starting in third grade, they learn English. But when parents are together, Hebrew's the dominant language in Israel. Most Israeli Jews don't speak Arabic. Most Arabs in Israel do speak Hebrew. And yeah. I mean, I speak fluent Hebrew. I speak some Arabic, very little. That's just the nature of majority language, minority language. But some of our parents, one of the things that one of our parents' community does is some of the Arab parents teach spoken Arabic on Zoom lessons. Arabic's a very complicated language. There's a formal written version called Fusha, which is the language of the Quran. It's the language that's written. And traditionally, when you speak Arabic dialect, you don't write that dialect. That's just spoken. The emphasis in our school is for kids to learn to speak. The Jewish kids are not going to be proficient in reading literature. So part of the week, they're working a little bit harder on their Arabic, and the Arab kids can do more advanced Arabic language things. So what else? Yes.
Have there been efforts by Yad to work towards integrating the public school system in Israel to become more inclusive? Because the school system in Israel tends to be very separated. You have schools that are predominantly for Jewish children and schools that are predominantly for Muslim children or Arabs, Muslims and Christians who speak Arabic. But if the public school system was a little bit more integrated, it would probably help a lot.
I mean, that's, in Arabic we say, inshallah, halavai. That's our goal. From the very beginning, we've been working in collaboration with the Ministry of Education, which is like the national school district in Israel. 2/3 of our teachers are paid by the ministry because we need their funding. And two, if we can get them behind us, they're not doing that. The thing that they are doing is in certain cities, in Jaffa, there's a phenomenon where we have our own preschool there, a pretty big preschool and an elementary school. There are other preschools, city-run preschools that were Jewish, Hebrew-speaking, Jewish curriculum, Jewish holidays, but they're in a neighborhood where there were a lot of Arabs, and some of the Arab families, especially poor families, started sending their kids, but they were not getting any cultural content related to them. It was all in Hebrew. And so the city asked us to come in and share our curriculum. We got them to hire Arabic assistant teachers. We created a shared calendar program where they start celebrating other holidays, Christian and Muslim holidays. So they're not our schools, they're not as intense. That's the city that's doing that. The ministry, the professionals in the ministry really like what we're doing. And we're doing it in Jaffa and also Upper Nazareth. I mentioned that city. We have, I think, 10 preschool classrooms there and 14 classrooms in Jaffa where we're doing that. But beyond that, really trying to integrate. There are models, not integrated schools, but where a Jewish class in one school once a week or once a month has a get together with an Arab class from an Arab school. And it's good. Usually kids that are old enough so that the Arabs speak enough Hebrew. We would love to become obsolete. We would love the Israeli government to really raise the banner. I mean, we can raise our budget's $15 million a year. I mean, the Israeli government can raise, 1 billion shekels a year, $250 million, and open new schools just like that. A government can do a lot more than a nonprofit can. But one, right now, they're pretty distracted by everything after October 7th and the ceasefire and the war and hostages. And two, that's a political decision. The professionals can give us some extra funding and extra teachers, but really taking this on, and we've had so many different ministers of education. Most of them have visited us. Most of them have been from right wing to left wing, they've been pretty open. Some of you may remember that before the current Netanyahu administration, there was a prime minister named Naftali Bennett. Before that, he was minister of education, and he visited us at our school. And so that helps us, but they're not yet saying, let's go integrate. We'd like them to. I mean, eventually, maybe. I mean, it seems like such a missed opportunity. Even if you're a right-wing Jewish Israeli politician, you don't want an Arab population to be hostile, and you want them to be productive and learn Hebrew and get, and our schools are really good academically. But there's fear. There's fear now. A lot of Jewish parents, they're afraid at first. They've never. Some of them, they come. What overcomes their fear is talking with their friends. and seeing that these are just kids, they're playing soccer
But
together.
just to clarify, the students in your schools, the Arab, students and the
Jewish students,
Jewish students, they're all Israeli.
all Israeli. So
Israeli
we're working inside of Israel. I mean, it would be lovely if there could be better relations and there could be a school like this in the West Bank, and if, someday in Gaza, but we're so far away from that. And these are Arabs, Palestinian Israelis who this is their home and they want equality, and they feel that if their kids can learn Hebrew easy, they can really compete on an equal footing. Most of our kids eventually go to universities or colleges. And yes.
On the last slide, I couldn't avoid noticing that USAID showed up as one of the funding organizations. Given the current political situation in this great country, I suspect you don't get a lot of funding from the US government anymore. Are there other supporters, including nations, that are providing some support and funding?
So very interestingly, our funding from USAID didn't stop because of Trump. It stopped earlier because they've been funding us for a long time. We started when George Bush was president, and it was through the State Department, then in the Obama administration, through the first Trump administration. I think it stopped for us because they've been funding us for a long time, and they thought we were on a good footing, and they wanted to fund other projects. If we apply, so we were kind of lucky. We were not. I mean, the Israeli government recognizes our schools, so we do get funding from European. The Swiss embassy has funded us, the Dutch embassy, quite a bit of some large grants from a small number of foundations in Germany. Some of the churches have foundations. There's a group called Kinder Missionwerke, which is a Christian children's relief organization. So we do get funding. I mean, most of the fundraising that we do is in the United States. Primarily, but not only in the Jewish community. I've spoken to a lot of churches, and I know that the Presbyterian Church, some of you probably know this, on the national level, there's been a lot of controversy and conflict among people on the one hand who are they want to boycott Israel, they want to divest from Israel, and others. And here in Houston, there was a dialogue group run by on the Jewish side by the American Jewish Committee and the Presbytery of the New Covenant, the local presbytery, a man named Mike Cole, and they said, well, why don't we invest in something that you can all believe in Israel? And they started supporting us, including sending for a full year a woman from a Presbyterian church in Ohio to work at our school. And I think some of the funding raised here helped subsidize her trip. And there have been some Presbyterian groups that have come to visit our schools. So we're lucky that we weren't affected by that. I mean, they were giving big grants, and I know that there are people suffering now around the world because they were, I think there are people dying because they're not getting much medical aid through USAID. It was billions of dollars, unfortunately. Someone else had their hand up. Yes. Oh, you have another question. So I want to show another video, but before I forget, I want to also, I spoke with David and Laura when we had lunch about whether you might organize a visit from Woodlands Presbyterian Church to come to Israel. I tried to tell people that going to Israel is safe. Israel is not, sometimes I remember when I was living in Israel in the 1980s, Israelis were afraid to go to New York, and they had this image that every single person who went to New York got mugged. And I said, there aren't 9 million muggings a day in New York. But when you're here and you haven't been to Israel, there are some Israelis here, you're more in danger of getting hurt in a car accident, literally, than anything else. When there was missile attacks coming from Hezbollah in Lebanon, flights were flying. Two of our schools, we have a school in Haifa and a school in the Galilee, and they were closed intermittently because most schools don't have bomb shelters that are large enough so kids were at home. Our schools were not in the way of the Hamas attacks, but there were kids who didn't understand the geography, and they were traumatized because young kids in Israel have phones and they're on social media at a much younger age, and I think part of that is some of the anxiety that parents have. They want to know where their kids are always. And there were kids who said, well, are the terrorists going to come into our house? And they were in Haifa or somewhere else, which was not anywhere near Gaza. it is a small country, but it can be very safe, and you can visit our schools, among other things, and really be inspired and see a lot of other things, and of course see Christian sites and Muslim sites and Jewish sites. It's pretty easy to fly on United from Houston to Newark to Israel, nonstop from Newark. Yes.
I have a comment more than a question.
Yes.
My question was answered by the questions gentleman asked
Okay.
earlier. I grew up in Sri Lanka. May have heard that we had a conflict as well.
Tamil and Sinhalese, of course.
So I went to school and you were talking about tracks. We had the Sinhalese track, Tamil track. None of us learned the other's language. So somebody tried to start that when we were young and then gave up.
Wow.
So I really do believe, having grown up never speaking Tamil, and my Tamil classmates were in a separate track. So they had one class, they had 3 classes. I was in a private school, so that was possible. I really do think the language is the way to go, because if you can speak the language or understand the language, that makes, especially children.
Right.
So you said that they learned speaking Arabic, but because the Britain is a completely different ballgame, and I can understand that Sinhalese is like that. We have speaking dialect and right. How much do they actually speak Hebrew or Arabic in school?
Yeah, so first of all, the Arab students in the school learn Hebrew very quickly. It's their parents usually know Hebrew. Hebrew is the dominant language of academia, language of business. But the Jewish kids are becoming fluent in Arabic. It takes them longer. It's the Arab students, for the most part, some of the Arab students are kind of worried because some of the Arab students say it's easier for them to read novels, learn English starting in 3rd grade. Now, these one has one English speaking parent. But in Europe, there are people who can grow up speaking 4 languages. It really widens cognitively. There's some research that shows that it helps them in other subject matter. English, we're a big country, and most Americans have never been out of the country. A lot of Americans don't have passports. So we really believe the language. And later, before we leave, I'm going to show you a video made for us by the former president of Israel, a man named Ruby Rivlin, who. And I wanted to also say something that hand in hand crosses a lot of partisan lines. It's not a left-wing, right-wing project. I mean, it is a project that we have to be open-minded. And there are parents who, over their dead body, would never send their kids to our school. And we've had vandalism at our school, and I can tell you a really kind of inspiring story about an arson attack at our school. But when the mayor of Jerusalem, at the time when we got our new campus, was a man named Ehud Olmert. He was from the Likud. He later became prime minister from a right-wing party, but a very decent, believed in democracy. And he loved our school. He thought parents should have a choice of where they send the kids. And he also was a mayor, and he had voters. And he had some of those voters were Arab voters. And he wanted to do something that he could get. Mayors have to be pragmatic. And that pragmatism sometimes overcomes their ideology. And he got us this school building. I mentioned that we had a former minister of education who was very right-wing, but a very decent, sort of nice guy. He's not under indictment the way our prime minister is in Israel. And he visited our school, and he genuinely liked it. It's about, I always like the fact that when I come into parents' meetings, when I'm in Israel, I see a lot of arguing. There's disagreement, and that makes me feel good, because if there's no arguing, everybody agreed. It's kumbaya, and you're preaching to the choir, so to speak. And I think you need to preach to people who need to open their minds a little bit. So, but the kind of arguing that goes on can be very heated arguing about this conflict among the parents. They can then go out and have coffee together afterwards. It's an argument based on some friendship and I think to solve conflicts also, if you have some kind of common interest, that can help overcome the conflict. If you artificially bring people together for dialogue and there's nothing that holds them together, it sometimes doesn't do the trick. And here, they want their kids to get a good education. The kids get invited to each other's houses for birthday parties, for sleepovers, for play dates, and then the parents get to know one another. And in Israel, you know, especially on the Arab side and on the Jewish side too, there's like a lot of hospitality, and you can't go to someone's house without being sat down and given coffee and cake. And there's even there's this Arabic has a lot of etiquette, and there's this word badri, which means too soon. Like someone gets up to leave, and they say badri, you got to have another piece of coffee. And then there's this kind of there's coffee in Arabic is kahaweh or ahaweh, and there's the coffee of hello, the coffee in the middle, and the coffee of goodbye. And it's like it's kind of like, I mean, maybe among the Tamils there's some traditions maybe with tea. I'm guessing more with tea than with coffee, but
hospitality is a very big part of
yeah. More questions. And maybe I'll tell you some funny stories. So in the first year, you know, I until COVID, I was going back to Israel every year, and I've been back several times. I was there on October 7th. During Ramadan, most of the Muslim students, maybe not the little ones, will fast. Now, they may not be religious. They may never go to a mosque, and some of their parents might drink alcohol at home. And if you're a devout Muslim, you'll drink alcohol. But, you know, I'm Jewish, and a lot of Jews will fast on Yom Kippur, but they might still eat pork, or they might another day. So in the school, it was Ramadan, and the Muslim kids were fasting. And so a lot of the Jewish kids, they just felt bad. They didn't want to eat in front of their Muslim kids. And so you'd get these comments from the Muslims saying, why should you suffer? We're suffering enough. Go ahead and eat. You know, it was really cute. And then there's another story, which is, I'm going to tell you about this vandalism attack. So over the years in Jerusalem, and Jerusalem's a challenging city. It's much poorer than Tel Aviv. You have a very ultra-Orthodox population and modern Orthodox on the Jewish side. You have the Palestinians in East Jerusalem, most of which don't have Israeli citizenship. It's the border to the West Bank. There is some terrorism there. It's poor because there's no industry. It's the government and services. Over the years, we've had vandalism, usually by right-wing Jews, because they write in Hebrew in Mavet la'Aravim, death to Arabs, Ein du kiyumi l'sartan, there's no coexistence with cancer. 3 young men in November, or Saturday night in 2014, spray painted on the walls of the school. And in Jerusalem, all the buildings have a facade made out of Jerusalem stone. So when you spray paint, you have to sandblast it, get rid of it. And these 3 young men set fire to the school. They were caught on video, and they went to jail, some of them. Sunday is a school day. Our school week is Sunday through Thursday. They set fire to the first grade classrooms. They did a lot of damage. Didn't burn down the school because it's cement and stone. That night, about 300 people came to the campus, parents and high school students, to figure out how are they going to set up classrooms for the first graders. So they reorganized the high school classrooms literally till 2 a.m. So the first graders could study there. We had 2 classes, first grade, and for 2 months, the high schoolers literally met in the hallway. The next morning, Sunday morning, about 1,000 people came out of solidarity to the school, including the mayor, the minister of education, who was an Orthodox Jew, a man named Shai Peron, and it was during Obama's presidency, his ambassador to Israel, a man named Daniel Shapiro. And he organized something which I'll tell you about. Friday, which is not a school day, it's part of our weekend, our school is on what used to be the train tracks, and now it's a walking path where people jog and walk their dogs, very picturesque. We had about 15,000 people walking along this promenade up to the plaza where the school is. And it was not a protest, it was like a happening. We had music and food and face painting for the kids, and then a lot of television, because this was a big deal, a school being set on fire. And one of the television news stations was interviewing 3 boys who were in 5th grade. And they were talking with this Arab boy, and they were asking him in Hebrew, so why do you think these men did this? And he said, they just don't think Arabs and Jews go to school together. And then they said, well, what do you think they should do to him? And you'll forgive my language, he didn't say they should beat the shit out of him. They said they should make them come and volunteer in our school, and they'll learn that what we're doing is really good. Now, I can't prove that empathy came from our school, but it's just something really nice. This guy didn't have this hate or anger. the American ambassador, Daniel Shapiro, organized and arranged for two of our students, two ninth graders. They were chosen by lottery to come to the White House. The Obamas every year would have a Hanukkah party. And in Hanukkah, there's a candle thing called a menorah, or a Hanukkah, that has 8 candlesticks. And they brought a menorah that kids made. It wasn't a beautiful menorah, but each of the 8 candlesticks had something either in Hebrew or Arabic that said peace, brotherhood, coexistence, partnership, solidarity, nonviolence. And these two kids were up there in front of all these people, and they met the Obamas, and it was really quite a lovely thing. So, and there was a woman that night on Saturday night that came to help, but she was quoted as saying at the beginning, I have to take my daughter out of this school. I don't want her to be a target. And at the end of the evening, she said that she felt so much support and solidarity. She said, I'm staying here. It's the only place I want to be with my daughter. And so that was kind of a tragic thing, but it brought the community together. There's a lot of hate in Israel. I mean, there's an Islamic movement in Israel. It's very, very conservative. And I'm sure that in that Islamic movement, there are some people that support Hamas. I mean, they don't say it publicly, but there are some. I think it's a minority. It's a very diverse community, but more and more our parents are attracted to our model. Maybe I can show this. It's a 3-minute video. It's Reuven Rivlin, and it's with subtitles. And it was made during COVID, so it was before this war. But it's really quite moving what he says about. Show you where it is. It's number 4.
I gotta get.
Yeah, just give us a second. A question. Meanwhile, any question? Okay. The president of Israel is not the head of. He's officially the head of state, but the prime minister is the head of government. The president is elected by the parliament, what's called the Knesset. And he also, when he was speaker of the Knesset, he came and visited our school as well. And then he became a really big fan. And after the arson attack, he invited the first graders to come to his house. And he's got it's like a little, like the White House, but it's called Beit HaNasi, the president's house. And there's this wonderful video of him wearing a suit and tie. These are first graders, right? And he's like pontificating and giving the speech. And his wife's like rolling her eyes. And then she literally leaned over and says, they want to have ice cream. They do this, like, and he stopped. I mean, it's like a really funny thing. He was like, it's that one with this one here, yes. So you'll have to read the subtitles. I want to mention one thing that he said, which I thought really stands out. He said, Jews and Arabs weren't sentenced to be together like it's a punishment, but that we were made to be together. I think I love that. And, I think and he talks about the power of language, which you talked about. So, I know that some people might have to leave, so I could stay, but I want to encourage you to take some of the materials here. And I know that you're involved in supporting lots of wonderful things, but if you're so moved and you want to also support hand in hand, please consider that. You're welcome to do that. And if you ever would consider coming on a trip to the Middle East, where it can be safe and it would be a really wonderful, meaningful experience, you can visit hand in hand and meet some of our students and teachers and parents and learn more, more than from me. So thank you so much. Thank you.
I want to thank Lee so much for being here. And I also wanted to put on the board the church's website. So hopefully this will get up there. I'm sure Hand in Hand's website and all that stuff.
Yes.
But the church's website is I'm not a teacher, you can tell. WCPC, Woodlands Community Presbyterian Church -TX.org.
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay.
So if you want to see a particular part or all of this, or if you have friends that are saying, well, what was it about or something like that? This is a good place to send them to see them, give them I don't know how long it takes to get it up.
How soon will that be on?
I don't know. John, how soon do you think that gets up? We don't know.
Well, I just got it 30 minutes before, so I have no clue.
He says probably sometime tomorrow.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
Will you leave that
Thank you
up
for being the
on
chat
board
person.
there for?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Because we have women's Bible study tomorrow.
Oh, good. Yeah. Yeah.
And for those of you who are our guests, that this wouldn't be helpful, but for those of you who are members of this congregation, we will certainly send something out to the congregation to let you all know
Okay.
that the video is up. And perhaps you can let your friends know that we'll let our networks know that.
And we do have something to drink, and I think it's lemonade and water and cookies out here in the little kitchenette.
And I want to say these glasses are recyclable.
Good.
And it's like, there's right here, the good recyclable bin. If you have extra pieces you don't eat, there's a pan that says cookie crumbs. And that goes to our compost.
Right. This is Cindy Hitchcock. She's the reason we have it was organized. So thank you so
Thank you for
much.
doing it.
And thank you all for coming.